Hello, my name is Troy Prasovsky. I'm an agronomist with DEKALB. Today I get a chance to talk to you about a widespread disease that does very well under wet, humid growing conditions, Sclerotinia. We're going to talk about identification, high-risk, low-risk situations, and best management practices. So now we're going to talk about Sclerotinia identification. Now obviously this isn't the right time to go out and scout for Sclerotinia to see if you have it in your field. The optimal time would be in that fall time, closer to maybe your swathing timing, or maybe even a little bit before. This field here in particular was protected with a fungicide, so I don't expect to see any damage right now at this point. What we look for in the fall time though is we look for that premature hastening or that bleaching of the stems. And once we rip those stems open or open them up, you'll see sclerotia bodies inside. And those sclerotia bodies are a telltale sign of Sclerotinia stem rot. Another sign earlier in the life cycle would be these little apothecia. And they're little golf tee-like mushrooms, and what they do is they shoot off these ascospores into the atmosphere, and they can travel quite far distances, and what they do is they land on the petals of the plants, and these petals act as a food source, and what the petals do is they'll fall off and they'll land in the axes and the crotches of the canola plant, causing the disease to set in. So now it's time to go out and assess our risk. There's no substitution to good crop scouting. We've got to scout each field individually to assess the risk. There's 4 things that I would consider that would put us at high risk. Number 1 would be that wet early spring or wet spring all the way up into June. Those wet conditions, whether that's relative humidity or whether it's a heavy dew, will be perfect conditions for that Sclerotinia to thrive. 2 would be that thick crop canopy that we have. That canopy that covers in and closes in well, and that air has a hard time to move through. Number 3 would be high yielding canola. High yielding canola puts you into the higher risk category because that's the kind of environment that Sclerotinia thrives in. What's good for high yielding canola will be good for Sclerotinia as well. The 4th thing that would put you at high risk would be considering how wet your crop canopy is. Walk out into your field. If you're wet from your knees down to your feet, this is great conditions for Sclerotinia to thrive. This would be the number 1 indicator that I use in assessing Sclerotinia. Now that we've assessed our fields and we found ourselves in a high-risk situation and we do plan on applying that fungicide, the next thing we want to do is make sure we apply it at that proper time. Now keep in mind that depending on the product, you want to be anywhere from that 20 to 50% bloom. And how we decide on, how we can tell on where 20 to 50% bloom is, we take the main stem and we count the flowers, the open flowers on it. Even counting the pods, even if the flower has come off. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and likely a 15th will open today. So this would be 20% bloom, which would be that optimal timing. The reason that we want to be at that 20% bloom and protect those first flowers is because those are the flowers that will fall into the axes of the plant and cause that early infection. And that early infection is what will cost you the majority of your yield. Even though the best time to identify Sclerotinia is in the fall, it's not the best time to apply a fungicide. Our fungicides need to be applied earlier in the season at that 20 to maybe even up to 50% bloom. Now the reason that we want to go out and look in the fall is we want to assess the amount of disease that we actually have out there in the field. And then maybe that'll better equip you for making that fungicide decision in upcoming seasons. A way to tell how much infection you have and what the yield costs you would be count the amount of plants that you have infected. If you have, for instance, 20% plants infected, then you would times that by 0.5, giving you about a 10% yield loss. Lastly, let's look at hybrid selection. Each hybrid is going to show different tolerance levels to Sclerotinia. 7444 BL would be my first choice for protecting myself against Sclerotinia. So sowing a crop like this, penciling in a fungicide, and applying if necessary are my best management practices.